Makes sense. 15 is not between 17 and 25. So let's figure out what's going on here. Okay. So the key observation is MATLAB basically, with less than or equal to, takes it, an operator or an operand before the operator and operand after at a time. It's going to look at 17 less than or equal to age first. So it'll say 17 less than or equal to age. Is 17 less than or equal to 15? Well, no. That's false. False is 0. So this part evaluates to 0. And then MATLAB says, okay, well, let's move on, keeping with our order of operations. 0 less than or equal to 25. Hey, well, that's true. So 1, true. And that's why MATLAB's giving the erroneous answer of 1 for true. Okay. The problem here is that MATLAB evaluates it, the operator has the two operands. It doesn't look at this, big thing as one statement. It breaks it down. Okay. So recall, you always have to do, if you want to find something between 17 and 25 inclusive, age greater than or equal to 17 and age less than or equal to 25. So don't mess that up. It'll do some funny things. Right? So now let me introduce switch case. Switch case is kind of an alternate formulation of an if statement, and it only works when a variable takes on a few discrete values. Right? Let's say if you have a variable x, that'll be either 1, 2, or 3. Switch case is an easier way to write an if statement. If your variable takes on a range of values, like let's say you want to test if it's between 1 and 100, switch case is not the thing to use. Use an if statement. Switch case you only use for discrete values, like a couple exact values a variable can take on. So you put switch and then a variable name, and then case, and then option 1. So this could be, if x is 1, you would say case 1, and then what happens when x is 1. Then you can put case 2, and what would happen if x is 2. And then the analog of else for switch case is called otherwise. You have to write otherwise, you can't write else. Okay? And so let's look at this in action. And one place this becomes pretty useful is with strings. We'll talk probably next lecture about string comparisons, but it doesn't work quite the way you think. Okay? So switch case for now is probably the best way to compare strings. Okay? So let's say we have a variable called destination, and right now it contains Bolivia. Which is a good thing for it to contain. That's where I just got back from right the day before the semester started. Right? So what we do is we say switch destination. Destination's our variable. Right? And in kind of all of our examples, we're going to be naive and pretend we don't know what destination equals. Right? We can say, okay, case Florida, which means if the variable destination contains the value Florida, contains that string, display boring. Right? If it contains the string Italy, display a little less boring, so on. This last example, or third example rather, if it contains either Peru or Bolivia, right? So we're basically in the squiggly braces giving two possible options. If the variable destination contains either of those options, then we'll display exciting, which is what would display in this example. And then if, let's say, destination contained not Florida, not Italy, not Peru, not Bolivia, but something else, our program would display, I don't know about that country. Okay, so switch case works well when you have a couple of discrete examples that a variable can take on. In practice, you don't necessarily have to use this, but you do need to recognize it, and I may on an exam ask you to convert some if statement into a switch case, or vice versa. So you need to be able to do that. Right, and so here about mid-lecture, well, in this case, more than mid-lecture, we'll do a few announcements. Note that in attendance, in recitation, we'll be taking attendance starting this week. Right, so you'll be, if you're, a week of recitation usually begins on about, a Wednesday. So we have lecture Tuesday night, Wednesday afternoon, and recitation Wednesday afternoon, Thursday, Friday, Monday, and Tuesday. That's kind of our week of recitation. Then we have the next lecture next Tuesday night and Wednesday afternoon, and the new week of recitations begins. So between Wednesday and the following Tuesday, all of the recitations cover the same material. Regardless, you need to go to your assigned recitation section, and by assigned I mean whichever one I've told you you're going to if you've asked me to switch. All right? We're taking attendance. You sign in on the attendance sheet. If you switched into that section after I made the rosters for the class, you won't be on there. Make sure you write your name at the bottom and note this so that I can add you to the printed sheet for next week. Right? Otherwise, your attendance grade at the end of the semester might get a little bit messed up. Okay. So hopefully by now you've gotten your engineering account for the DSV and EIT labs, your username and password. If you have not, please see Mark Sproul, the manager of Engineering Computing Services. He's in room D111 in the engineering building. It's right behind the EIT lab in D-Wing. Right? And then one more thing, and this should actually say Project 1. So Project 1 will be posted late tomorrow. And as I'm writing, it's Tuesday evening, so it'll be posted late Wednesday. When I post it, you'll get an email, and it's due in about a week and a half. So you should probably get on it pretty soon. All right? And I guess that's it for the announcements today. And one other thing I'm adding into lectures starting today is, well, because you guys are all freshmen, you're new to New Brunswick. So I decided, I'll do a public service and use a minute of each lecture to basically show you a new New Brunswick area restaurant. Since dining hall gets old pretty fast, sometimes you want to go out with your friends, go out on a date or something. Well, maybe this restaurant may not be best for a date. But today's restaurant, and we'll have one each week, is called Cinco de Mayo. It's on French Street in New Brunswick. If you're relatively familiar at this point with New Brunswick, here's Route 27, Albany Street. This way, it's going to Highland Park. It goes over the bridge over the Raritan. So here's the train station. This would be Easton Ave. And then Route 27 goes down, changes names, and it splits into Jersey Ave and French Street. This restaurant is, right after the split, maybe 2 blocks on French Street. And it's the best Mexican restaurant in New Brunswick. The pros are that's super cheap. You get a huge burrito. This is actually a picture I found on the internet of something else random. But you get like a giant plate-filling burrito that can usually last you lunch and dinner, even if you're pretty big person with a big appetite. And it's $3.95 for a burrito. You can get pork, you can get chicken. Very, very tasty. Huge. If you eat in the restaurant, you get free nachos and salsa that are very good. So you could go and for $3.95 plus tax have a sit-down meal of nachos and salsa, a burrito, and take it home for dinner too. One con is it's if you don't speak Spanish, depending on what waitress you get, you might have a little bit of trouble ordering. But at this point, most of the waitresses speak some English. So yeah, if you like Mexican food, then I very, very highly recommend Cinco de Mayo. And so check back next week for another restaurant review. And right now I'm going to switch to the next lecture video. Alright, so welcome to this next part. And we're going to continue the lecture talking about vectors and matrices. Right. And so for those of you who haven't seen them before, the idea of a vector or a matrix, and a vector is just a special case of a matrix, is to be able to store a bunch of numbers pretty much in one structure. So here we have structure, say 3, 6, 9, right? So we have one vector, right? And a vector is just a one-dimensional matrix, and we have 3 values stored inside it. And vectors come up quite a bit in physics, math. Linear algebra is almost entirely matrices. Your first physics class is probably going to be extensively working with vectors. Right, so vectors, matrices aren't some magical thing that show up only in MATLAB. They're actually quite important in engineering.